Hi, so this video will be split into two parts. For once, we will be talking about how it took this guy 400 hours to make this video. But before we get into that, we will look into the two critical comments that have reached me in response to the video. And just to say this again, thank you all for the kind words, and even those two comments are exactly what I asked for. They are constructive feedback, one more aimed at the devs and the game, the other pretty much exactly aimed at my video. And I will be responding to these comments on the same constructive note in which they are written. And in case you want to say anything about them in the comments to this video or seek the original comments themselves, I would like to ask you to also be respectful and constructive about whatever you have to say. Thanks a lot, and now let's get into it. So, to quickly summarize the criticism here. Lack of online presence from the devs. This is no valid point of criticism in my book, because most devs that aren't community devs that you see in the public light work in game design and on paper have no requirement to be interacting with the community. So they will do most of that on top of their day-to-day workload. And after you've had a stressful day at work or in school, you probably never got home and felt like putting more time into work or school, even though you didn't actually have to. And regardless of what you think about the devs, you simply have to respect them for doing that in the first place. Next thing is making changes that no one asked for. Most of the changes that are made to lay groundwork for future plans or as a result of requests from somewhere in the community. If you see a change that you feel like makes no sense, then chances are you either have to give it a few months for it to unveil its full potential, or you are simply not the target audience for it. Most of the community doesn't do this though, which is the main reason for why on many occasions the plug to exciting features has been pulled prematurely. A ton of my own feedback was also part of the 1.33 Kevlar update. The problem is that there is a very select few people respectfully talking to the devs, while the rest just demands the old game from someone that has never seen, played, or worked on the old game. Devs work with the feedback that they get, and if you're not satisfied with the update, that speaks for the fact that your feedback is probably dogshit. Next up, new FOV wasn't needed. So to first correct you, it's called a view model. Secondly, I need to say that what I'm giving here is no official information. Obviously, I'm not linked to Critical Force or anything. To my point of knowledge, the reason for why the view model was changed in 1.19 was because it had several bugs, most of which invisible to players. The 1.19 view model was always intended to be a temporary replacement until an actual permanent solution for all the problems of the old view model could be found. This permanent solution came with the 1.26 update, and I would imagine that it has simplified a ton of stuff on the back end as well. Therefore, the new FOV is a lot easier to work on for the devs. It is less buggy, and the code is probably less of a 10-year-old mess. Next up, lack of communication. That kind of falls in line with the lack of online presence from the devs, but I think in this case it's a bit different. The thing with the communication symbiosis is that so few people actually value it to begin with. Many people don't want communication, don't care about communication, or hate on the devs regardless of what they say. Especially with some idiots going as far as wishing death upon someone's fucking children over a mobile game, it should not be a surprise that there won't be anyone eager to be the one to present what the next update brings. Next up, quote, players couldn't adapt, so they hated it. Most of the updates that are seen as bad by the community were not even given the time that they would have deserved. When major changes are introduced into any competitive game, it will take months or sometimes even years until all the implications from the changes are fully understood and integrated into everyone's gameplay. In COPS, instead of months or years, most of the community didn't even give the updates hours. Crosshair smoothing or the Kevlar update, for example, were reverted before they even made the step from beta to live version. Nobody tried to help the devs to adjust the changes, which is the point of a beta, and everyone instead sat down and cried after having played the beta for like 15 minutes. Nobody has even bothered to do the bare minimum, which is to read the patch notes, understand the update, and precisely give ideas on how to improve things. If you are part of the beta program and you don't do these things, then you are taking a slot away from someone that could potentially help the game move forward. And on that note, fuck you in particular, you are in part responsible for the problems that COPS has. And while we're talking about the devs, I want to tell you something which I think some people need to hear. You are the community, and you know of some of the dumb shit that members of this community did or are currently doing. To the devs, you have given exactly the same amount of useful feedback as these people. So if you don't want to be seen as equal to these people, then take the first step. Talk to devs on socials, tell them about your vision for the game and how to achieve it. Report bugs privately instead of posting about them on YouTube, and put yourself into the perspective of other people. If someone personally attacked you, would you listen to their feedback in the future? After someone insults your fucking kids, would you come home from work and instead of spending quality time with your kids, would you listen to what these people have to say and what they think about a community that you know that they themselves have played a part in ruining? Ask yourself that. Thank you. And this brings us right to the next comment. Aim assist as a provider for equal opportunity. So firstly, I don't think aim assist should have this job. And secondly, I don't think that there should be such thing as equal opportunity in competition, at least not when we talk about players from different skill levels. That opportunity should need to be earned by the players through practice and experience, and nothing else really. The closest thing to equal opportunities that a game should have is a matchmaking system that ensures that players of all different skill levels can enjoy the game by playing against players on their skill level or slightly above or below. This already is a thing in basically all shooters. Second point, aim assist reducing the skill gap is positive somehow. Yeah, I don't get this at all. It might just be wording, but saying that a removal would cause a divide between the players that can afford practice and those who can't is kind of weird. That is the main point of competition, not just in gaming. That is like wanting to participate in a sprinting event and complaining that someone that has put his life into the sport is faster than you, and somehow expecting a sort of compensation or special treatment just because you're bad. Like, a skill gap is important, and as long as the sport or game in question has a clear way of keeping the pros and the noobs apart, I don't see a problem. Next point, aim assist as a supplier of free dopamine. I mean, this might just be me, but personally, I'm not particularly proud of something that I feel like anyone can achieve. And I think if we were to replace being good at COps with literally anything else from our day-to-day life, you would probably agree. All the things we chase are things that we look at as desirable, and part of what makes them desirable is the prestige and the fact that only few people have them. If everyone was wealthy, nobody would be wealthy. If it was as easy as walking into a gym, sitting on a bench for 15 minutes and walking back out in order to be fucking ripped, then it wouldn't be special or desirable to look good. And if there's no gatekeeping to these things, then there would be no competition in them either. Even the most simple games you remember from your childhood, from board games to video games to real-life sport, all of them have some sort of competition, from actual tournaments down to speedrunning. Did the pure fact that a few people spent many hours of their life analyzing how to best play Monopoly take any fun away from you playing it as a kid? Was playing Super Mario or Need for Speed for the first time any less exciting because some people make a living from trying to beat these games in the fastest way possible? I didn't think so. And that brings us to the next point. More engagement leads to less engagement somehow. So this is a line that I also don't quite understand. You're saying that casual players would need to put more time and effort into improving, but that somehow leads to less engagement. So them spending more time leads to them spending less time. And I get where this is coming from, but I personally just disagree. Like, I can just talk about myself here, but the only reason why I personally have ever quit a game that I was already like a few hours deep in was because I felt like I had nothing left to learn or accomplish. Which, if the skill gap and skill ceiling is higher, then that would be something that would happen a lot later or perhaps even never, which would boost the amount of engagement in casual players, not minimize it. Also, I think the willingness to quit a game when you've put like a few hours into it would be a lot higher than if you've spent a considerable amount of time in them. So, in short terms, an easy game builds hype, a difficult game builds loyalty. And considering we are mainly talking about aim assist's impact on the competitive scene here, I would need to say that from my perspective, you're wrong. And because that makes it a lot easier, let's respond to the end as we go step by step. Aim assist should not be removed, as it is an integral part of the competitive scene. It shouldn't be, but yes. And its removal can harm the competitive scene. Yes, the comp scene and the game as a whole. Agreed. Aiming assist gives players the ability to hit their shots consistently and therefore enhances their overall performance. Yes, but it shouldn't, only skill should be able to do that. Aiming assist also works to level the playing field, since it is available to all players regardless of their shooting abilities. Exactly, it helps noobs close the gap to better players through no effort of their own, which it obviously shouldn't. Without aiming to assist in the competitive scene, the competition would be much less exciting and interesting. Source for that, dude, trust me, but like seriously, I played the game a lot when aim assist either wasn't being used or everyone played like it wasn't even there in the first place, and I can tell you, in terms of viewership, as well as in terms of competition, as well as in terms of excitement, and even in terms of diversity between different devices, these times were so much more fair and exciting. And I can also tell you firsthand, I prefer these times where you can just talk to comp players because they are humble, because they have gone every step of the way from the fucking trash noob all the way up to the best of the best. Those times were so much more refreshing than talking to some 14-year-old brat that has played the game for 4 weeks and just has an iPad with like the biggest ego imaginable because they feel untouchable, even though they've never actually accomplished or done anything. Finally, aiming assist also helps to reduce the skill gap between high and low elo players and encourages healthier, more competitive games. Firstly, yes, but this is not a good thing. Secondly, the thing that is meant to lead to more healthy and competitive matches is matchmaking. You're doing it in the wrong order. You're meant to have a skill-based game first, and then have a system that finds 10 guys that are at about the same level on this graph. That is called matchmaking. The way you are trying to do it is to pick 10 random guys from anywhere on this graph and then bastardizing the game to a point where they are somehow equal and make for an exciting match. That's not how it works, and that is not how it should work. Therefore, it is clear that the removal of aim assist would hurt the competitive scene and must remain in place to ensure an enjoyable and fair experience. Yes, aim assist should not be removed from the whole game, but from just the comp scene and high rank, yes please. This is also what someone replied to this very comment, which I agree with. I agree with it so much, in fact, that I proposed that exact thing about a year ago, and I agree with it so much that I initially wanted to have that as part of the conclusion of the aim assist video, but I didn't want devs to be bombarded and annoyed with it, so I scrapped it last minute and let them know private instead. And speaking of the aim assist video, let's get into that. So initially we would now be jumping into a 10-minute bit of me talking about how the aim assist video came to be and shit like that, but I know full well that nobody would watch through that for that long anyway, so I will now give you roughly 2/3 of the overall information within like a minute or two, okay? So I first mentioned aim assist in a script in May of 2019 for a video that was meant to compile the 10 biggest problems that COPS had at the time. After I was done with that script, I realized that it would be way too much, so I cut it down into smaller scripts, most of which have reached the devs behind the scenes, which told me that apparently 16-year-old me was onto something. Then 2 of these points were published on YouTube already, and some of which we will talk about soon enough. Anyway, after I uploaded this video, I figured I would want to explain in detail what my problem with aim assist was exactly about, and so on August 1st, 2021, I opened a new note titled aim assist. This note then was the origin of these 2 more example-based videos, and then once these were uploaded, I finished the majority of what would be the final draft that I sent to the devs in early 2022. From there on, all I had to do was editing. This is what the final timeline looks like, and just to quickly explain this, everything below this line is audio, everything above is video. One of these colored boxes means that there is one asset displayed on the screen or in the audio at a time. Based on the color, you can identify what kind of asset it is. This is simple in places like this, but a lot less simple in places like this. There's obviously more complex stuff, nested sequence and shit like that, but let's not get into that for simplicity's sake. One of the reasons why the editing took so long is that, aside from being caught up in other projects simultaneously, I also changed my mind about how the video was meant to look like after half an hour of it was already done, which forced me to redo big parts of the video, or at least adjust the stuff that was already done. And in comparison, this is what the timeline to the video you are currently watching looks like. I hope that helped you understand why I don't upload daily, and if you appreciate the effort that I put into these videos, leave a like, leave a sub, and yeah, have a nice day.